Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our new moon, which is happening really Thursday night into Friday morning. It also correlates with Diwali, which is the festival of lights in the Hindu culture. And this is a really important time of year. This is one of the most um, potent windows and not just in the Indian culture. This is also Samhain, right? This is a time when it's said to be the veil is very thin between the realms, and we can see in the northern hemisphere we're moving into that darkness, into that winter time. So this really correlates to the seasons as well. Um, Diwali is called the Festival of Lights, and it's really a celebration of the triumph of good over evil. And there's several different myths that are associated with it. Most famously is the Ramayan, which is the story of Lord Rama's conquering of the demon Ravana and his bringing of his wife back home. And I'm going to tell that story in a minute. But the celebration of Diwali is actually a 5-day affair. And it begins on tonight, which is Tuesday, the 29th, with Dhanteras. And this is a celebration of abundance. This is when we're putting forth prayers for financial prosperity, and blessings to Lakshmi can take place in this time, and also to the Ayurvedic god Dhanvantari. So this is sort of the first parlay into the celebration. And on Chaturdashi, which is the 14th Tithi before the new moon, we honor the ancestors. We can do puja to Kali. There is a very specific, window in every new moon and as we fade to dark, where we're really letting go and shedding things and allowing ourselves to make space for what's to come. The primary day of Diwali is it's usually the third day, and it's when we do Lakshmi Puja, and this is when people will be, lighting lanterns, and many of the pictures that you might see of lanterns floating in the sky. People light the diya lamps at home, the clay lamps with oil, and are inviting the light in. And this is a really important understanding of this festival, of this particular holiday, is that right now the sun is in its place of debilitation. It's in a state of its lowest, weakest power. Our connection to source, which is what the sun um, is weak. It's dim. And this is in the sign of Libra, in the star of Swati, where we are really struggling with the power that we hold and how much comes from other people and how much we're swayed by other people. And this is shown really prominently in the Ramayan, in the story at the end, because after Rama vanquishes Ravana, and it's like, okay, now everything's in celebration, right? Everything's okay, except for what arises for him is that his wife has been taken by this demon, and she's been in his possession for this period of time while he was trying to get her back. So he won his honor by winning her back, but she's been dishonored by being with this demon, and he can't take her back. And she's devastated. Excuse me, Sita, who is Lakshmi, is, she was born of the earth. She was found in a furrow in a field under a plow, which is how she was given the name Sita. And she is an emanation of Lakshmi. And Ram is the emanation of Vishnu that came here for the purpose of conquering Ravana. And he's not remembering that, right? He's thinking of himself in his human form as this son of the king, and he's been banished from his own kingdom. And in the woods, his wife was stolen, and all this series of events had to take place. This was a fated tale. Hanuman came to earth as a form of Shiva to help him. This was the gods determined this must be, that Lakshmi and Vishnu and Shiva had to come to Earth in order to conquer this demon because he was getting out of control. And in fact, one of my favorite parts of Ravana's story is how he has the planets on his stairs and he's stepping on each of the grahas every time he comes up. He's basically like, karma, my karma is not, does not rule me, I rule it. But Saturn turns his head up and gives him his glare. It's in the greatness of Saturn, the myth, the greatness of Saturn. He turns his head and gives him his glare, and he starts his 7.5 years of his sati sati, and that's when he gets conquered by Rama. Um, and so this need for Sita to prove herself arises, and she says, "Prepare for me a funeral pyre. If you won't take me, then I'm going to just throw myself in the fire." And he prepares the fire for her, and she jumps in her full, bathed in this beautiful gown. And she's, of course, untouched. The Agni, the fire god, protects her from the fire because she's pure of deed. She hasn't done anything wrong. And so he brings her out and says, "Take back your wife." And the gods all come down and say, "Do you remember who you are? You're Vishnu, she's Lakshmi, and you're divinely connected. You'll always be together. You have to take her back and treat her well." And so they go back to the kingdom and everything's fine, until Sita gets pregnant. And she asks for leave to go visit one of the ashrams they had visited on their exile together. And she's been devoted to him since the beginning. When he was exiled, she went with him. Right? He was exiled because the mother of his brother Bharata wanted Bharata to be on the throne. And so she used a boon she had from their father and sent Ram into the woods because he was the obvious heir to the throne. But Bharata didn't even want that, right? He didn't want to be the king. He wanted Ram to be the king. Everybody wanted Ram to be the king. And then all these trials and tribulations happened during his exile. And at the end of it, he kills Ravana, and now his queen has to prove herself to be innocent, and they come back to the kingdom. She falls pregnant and asked to go to the ashram in the woods. And he says, "Of course, you can go." And at that time he hears word that the people in the kingdom actually don't like her, and that they think that he's setting a precedent for their wives to be able to be unfaithful to them, and take them back. And so he's hearing these rumors, and he says to his brother Lakshmana, he says, "You have to take Sita to this ashram and keep her there. She can't come back because the people don't trust her and don't like her." And this to me, is an interesting reflection of this sun in Libra, right? Like the people are talking and the people have this opinion. And even though he knows the truth and he knows she's blameless, he still says she has to stay in the ashram by herself and have the babies there because, I have to rule the kingdom, and the kingdom won't be ruled if everybody doesn't believe in me and doesn't trust me. And this is kind of like the final chapter of the Ramayan, and it's kind of the untold part that doesn't often get shared. And it's really important to reflect upon these different ways in which we understand our power, because the power he had was innate, right? He was Vishnu. He was here as a god in the form of a king, and he was falling prey to the human thing that happens to all of us. And each of us are up connected to source, and we're divine. We're all part of the greater spirit. And yet we feel disconnected from it, and we identify so strongly with our ego body and with our life here on earth. We become swayed by that which is around us. And sometimes it might not even be the truth, right? Sometimes it's stories or rumors, perhaps from, maybe it's just one person says that. And then we hear it and we think everyone's thinking that one thing. The power of the stories we tell to ourselves is so profound, and it colors the way in which we behave in the world. And so this is one of the most powerful messages to really sit with in this time. For me, it is how we allow not even necessarily what other people think, but what we think other people think and what we think other people care about to affect our own power. Swati, the star that the sun and moon are coming together in, is ruled by Vayu, who is, he's the god of wind. He's the god of prana, and he is the father of Hanuman. He's the wind that brought the special pudding to Hanuman's mother so that she might bear this child of Shiva and go back up to the heavens as the Aspara she was originally. And he takes great care of Hanuman. It's very important to him to care for this child who grows to be this divine bhakta, this creature of just pure devotion and love. But he also can, you know, uproot the mightiest mountain. He can blow trees, aside when he wants to. And there is the capacity of holding his breath, which he shows when Hanuman has an accident and is hit by Indra with his lightning bolt and basically gets knocked unconscious and is going to die. Vayu holds his breath, and Indra is made to realize how important that is, how vital it is to everybody's well-being, that it's not just wind blowing that we feel in a breeze, it's literally our capacity to have life. And until he exhales and breathes again, everything's stuck and stagnated and nothing's alive. And so that power that each of us have to hold our breath, to lose our breath, to have the breath knocked out of us, to control our breath through pranayama, through practices, is very powerful. It's one of the most powerful entryways into meditation, is just to focus on your breath. And so when we understand the power we hold in that way, and how we harness our own magnificence and our own capacity to handle the wind around us by controlling the wind within us, we are able to move out of the stories of everything that's happening around us and the demons that we project around us, in the form often just of stories or of things that we think other people might think of this situation or another. This is a big Libra problem, right? This is the issue with Libra, is people pleasing, giving away our power so that we can be liked. But unfortunately, in the end, it always doesn't work out that way, because when you give away your power to be liked, you're giving away your power. And people can't be magnetized or attracted to that. If you're just constantly, bowing down to everyone else's wishes to be liked, in the end, there's nothing left to respect or to hold to. So this is what we're all reckoning with, as our sun is in debilitation. And of course, in this time, we happen to have Mars also in debilitation. Not always true right now, but also true in this moment, where Mars is in Cancer, and we don't feel as courageous or as disciplined or as strong as we usually do. Now, the interesting thing is he does give a 4-house drishti, and I'm going to share my screen so I can show you. He does give a one-way 4-house drishti from Cancer to the sun in Libra and the moon. And we can see 4 houses has to do with our heart, our home, the feeling. And he's in this natural 4th house of Cancer. And the moon is the owner of that house, the lord of that house. And so he's reflecting onto our emotions, our anger, our resentment, the hidden ones, the ones we might feel too afraid to share because we don't want to lose connection. But because he's kind of shaking the boat by us even having those emotions and not just rationalizing everything in our head and justifying our people-pleasing behavior, the pot's being shook. And then we have both Mercury and Venus in Mars's sign of Scorpio, Venus being the ruler of Libra. And so we also have this energy of more emotionalism and the volatile kind, right? The Marsian kind, where our relational planets of Venus and Mercury are engaging in Scorpio's badlands, I all kinds of shadows and projections and all kinds of you know, reflections of our fear. And so we have too much that's sort of destabilizing that perfect balance, that perfect Libran balance that we might be trying to find, that where stuff's likely to spill out, right? The pot is not going to stay full of perfect water without spilling a drop. There's going to be drops. It's going to get a little messy. And in a way, it's really beautiful because it allows stuff to come out, even if it doesn't happen in like the perfect way, even if we don't use the right words. With Scorpio, we often don't use the right words. We can get very fearful and controlling or sting, get our stingers out because we feel like we're being threatened. We feel our vulnerability. With Mars and Cancer, we feel our vulnerability. These are very vulnerable places, the water signs, and particularly Cancer and Scorpio have a lot of elements that come up with fear when certain planets are in them. The fear of loss of connection, the fear of being hurt. These are stories that can really come up for us. And so this is going to be an interesting moment. And then of course, right after our new moon, just to please all the Western astrology enthusiasts in the room, our moon goes into Scorpio, where it's debilitated itself. And so, just like kind of the opposite of Akshaya Tritiya, where we have our exalted sun and then a couple of days later our exalted moon, here we have our debilitated sun and then our debilitated moon. And that is why Diwali is celebrated at this time, because it's a time when we need the light. We need to be able to find the light in the darkness. When we're in the turmoil, the sea of emotions with our mind, and when our power is just being given in all directions. And then we also have these transits with Mars and Venus and Mercury at this time. They're not always in those placements. We need the light and we need to light candles, right? We need to light something outside of ourselves to remind ourselves of the light. And we need to join together and we need to remind ourselves of the tales of courage of these heroes. And the Ramayan is one of the more famous tales. There's also the story of Krishna conquering the demon Narakasara. There's the story of Lakshmi coming to us out of the turning of the Milky Way. And there is our own hero's tale, our own story, where we've had to face all the odds, everything against us. Even Ram, with all of his, exaltation and being a form of Vishnu, has just trial and tribulation after trial and tribulation. And he has to conquer a lot of those moments on his own. He receives help from his brother. He receives help from Hanuman and from the monkey tribe. He receives help from all these different places. But the darkest moments he has to walk through alone, even without Sita, right? He even has to banish Sita. And whether he does or doesn't, could be up for a debate in terms of our understanding of it, because all of these myths have to be taken into, they have to be brought into you. They are themselves, they're like these living, breathing portals of consciousness that we have the opportunity to receive and then process, not necessarily in a mental way, not necessarily to like argue or debate about, but to experience within ourselves all the different symbolisms and all the different ways in which we can relate to it. And for me, I often relate it to the astrology of the moment, like what in that myth that's coming out in this astrology, in this period of what we're experiencing, because I could tell that myth 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different days and different parts of it would come out. But in this moment, that part comes out very strongly to me around our power and how we're holding it and how we're giving it away and how we forget our own divinity and how the path to remember is often through the most challenging times, the most challenging circumstances that we have to face. And if you want to know what this new moon specifically is going to bring up for you, what area of your life is starting a new cycle, and also the transit of Mercury into Scorpio, I wrote about in this week's weekly stars report. I do a personal weekly stars report for each of the signs, so you can read about that in my member group cosmically aligned. And I have Mars in Cancer from a couple weeks ago and Venus in Scorpio. So all the transits I write about as the weeks go. And once you have access to the group, you can go to previous ones too and see that. So if you want to know your specific forecast for this moment in time, you can do that. And I'm also going to be speaking at a really amazing conference, the Parashara's Joy Tish conference in November. I'll be speaking on Friday, November 22nd. And I'm going to be talking about this difficult energy, the Dushtana houses, the 6th, 8th, and 12th houses, and how those difficult moments in our life really can be the turning points that bring us closer to grace and closer to our Dharma. And so if you would like to know more about the conference and register, I have a special code you can use to get a discount. You can use Radha, Radha. I'll have a little thing at the end of this video so you can see where the link is to the Parashara's conference. And I would love to see you there and dive a little deeper into this idea that our biggest difficulties are also our biggest blessings. Have a blessed Diwali, and I hope to see you soon. Namaste.